as soon as you think you've got everything under control and you've got a handle on like how a 2-year-old works, a 3-year-old comes along and changes everything. And
Oh
that
yeah.
seems to happen every year.
Hello and welcome to the Dad Dialogue podcast. I'm your host Laurence. Today I'm talking to my friend Matt. Matt is a self-employed musician, designer, and he also co-owns a clothing company. We're talking about raising a young family as well as the idea of being a self-employed dad and the pressures that can sometimes bring. Matt has some great wisdom to share with us today, so I hope you enjoy the conversation. So how old is your boy now?
Levi is 4 years old.
And is he preschool, daycare, school? What does it look like for him?
He's at preschool. I think he finishes preschool in July, and then he will be starting school in September.
Does he know about that? Like, is he excited for it? Does he know?
He is super stoked. He can't wait for school. It feels like he's outgrowing preschool a little bit. He kind of gets a little bit bored or a little bit frustrated, but he is super excited for school, which is good. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. We don't actually know where he's going to go yet. So we have to apply for schools I think it's by the end of December in the UK, and then we find out. I think we find out this week.
Okay.
Exciting times.
That's cool. I've always found it interesting for like friends and family in the UK for this age, for up until where Levi is, that the balancing act that a lot of parents have to like go through in terms of childcare, because it often seems that actual like daycare is so expensive. There's always this like very finely balanced seesaw of grandparent this day, mum this day. So how have you found like balancing that seesaw or that kind of balancing act of his care?
Mate, it's honestly insane. I don't know how anyone can like live a normal life and work a normal job and then have kids as well in the equation, because you're basically at the mercy of whatever the childminder or whatever the preschool has to offer. Mm-hmm. And some of them are super flexible, which is great, and some of them are not. And some of them charge you even more for the privilege of being flexible. So it is really tough. Luckily, my mum and Lydia, my wife's mother, they're both like really nearby. So my mum looks after Levi, or at least picks him up from preschool 1 day a week, and Lydia's mum does the same. And then he is at preschool 2 of those days. So he's at preschool 4 days a week. There's 2 half days where the grandparents pick him up, and then he does 2 full days where I'll get him at the end of the day. And then on the Friday, my wife has the day off and he has the day off, and they go out and have a lot of fun. So yeah, it's quite a wild seesaw.
Mm. And has it always been that kind of balancing act, or how was it like when he was like a toddler and a newborn?
Yeah, we got into that rhythm quite quickly, fairly early, I would say. I can't remember how old he was when he first started going to a childminder, but he was pretty young. Like he wasn't quite walking yet.
Right.
So yeah, that rhythm of kind of grandparents jumping in and helping out was pretty early on. So it's kind of all he's ever really known, which has been good, actually. It's been really cool. And
this is a personal curiosity of mine, because having been like a family that lives abroad, we've never had that kind of grandparental input, so to speak. So the boundaries of when it comes to, ensuring that things are kind of done according to how you want. Did you ever have to have those like kind of strict boundary conversations about certain foods or like certain toys or devices, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah. I think those conversations are ongoing. Like and you'll know this, as your kid gets older, like as soon as you think you've got everything under control and you've got a handle on like how a 2-year-old works, a 3-year-old comes along and changes everything, and that seems to happen every year. So yeah, it's like an ongoing conversation, I think, and like both the grandparents love to spoil Levi and love hanging out with him, and that's wonderful. And we want to kind of encourage that.
Mm.
Equally, there's got to be boundaries that you put in place, and no matter how fun it might be to give your kids sweets half an hour before bedtime, like it's us who have to pick up the pieces and kind of deal with that. And so you have to, say, look, like, can we not do that? And it's wild because there was a moment where my mum was like, yeah, it's all right, he can have this. I'm like, no, he can't. And then afterwards, she was like, you know what? I remember having the exact same conversation with your granddad when you were a kid, and he was giving you sweets before bed and stuff like this. So it's funny how it kind of comes full
Yeah.
circle. But because they're aware of that, it makes those conversations much easier. And we tend to be pretty relaxed. Routine is key for Levi. He thrives on routine, so that's our main thing. Is if we can keep routine, then some of the other things we can be a bit more relaxed on.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I wanted to get into your kind of background, what you kind of get up to, because I would say you're somewhat of a modern Renaissance man, right? You've got many strings to your bow. Self-employed musician, designer, clothing manufacturer. We can see your little clothing press right behind you there. So, how does it feel, kind of, from what I would say, having it all kind of on your own shoulders? I was curious, like, have you had when was the last time you kind of did full-time work?
Well, first off, no one's ever called me a modern day Renaissance man, so thank you for that. That is, I'm
You're
going to add that.
welcome.
I'll add that to my portfolio.
Yeah, please
As a job
do.
title. That's quality. Um, I have had full time work, so I've had various different full time jobs up until 2018. So I went fully self employed when I was 2018, and I kickstarted my design business and my music business at the same time. So the reason I went self employed was I was working for a web development company, and which was great. So I trained as a graphic designer, but had a bit of a curveball thrown at me where I effectively spent about, I think it was like 8 or 9 years working as a youth worker for various different organizations. And when that all came to an end, I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. A friend of mine had this web dev company, and he invited me to get on board on the condition that I'd learn this specific thing, which I did, and that kind of reignited my desire and my love for graphic design. And throughout my time there, I sort of built up a client base of clients, which was more design focused than web focused, and that was all very exciting. But the whole time, throughout my entire life, I've always wanted to pursue a career as a musician. That was always the dream. And so I was doing these various different jobs alongside being a musician. And for the most part, you have to pay for the privilege of being a musician. And so having multiple jobs was kind of par for the course. But it was around 2017, 2018, I started getting a lot of offers to do session work as a drummer, playing for various different artists or playing at conferences or whatever it might be. And that was not really anything I thought I'd do, but it was these offers kept on coming, and it was really exciting to be able to play different types of music and play for different types of people, and it looked like a real opportunity to actually realize the dream and pursue this career as a musician. But what was happening was I was working 9 to 5, finishing at 5, going to the studio, rehearsing all night, getting back real late. And that would just, the cycle continue. And then the weekend would come, and then I'd be off on tour or whatever it might be. And I just was never home. And it just wasn't sustainable to do that. And then I started to think, okay, I'm getting a lot of music work in now. I wonder if there's a way I can go self-employed and just balance my time and treat the music work like the 9 to 5. So instead of rehearsing in the evening, I can rehearse during the day and be home at reasonable time and things like that. And at the same time, we were in the process of buying a house. And so I sort of had to play my cards carefully because I didn't want to suddenly announce that I'm going to be self-employed. And I actually have no idea what my income is going to be. But can I still have that mortgage, please, bank manager? So we managed to get the mortgage and we bought the house. And then the day after we moved in, I think I handed in my notice, and the guys I was working with were amazing, and they effectively released a whole load of my clients, which was incredible. So it meant that I could kickstart the design business straight away without having to build anything up from scratch. So that was incredible, and forever grateful to those guys for allowing me to do that. And so that was in 2018, summer of 2018. And I've been building both businesses up since. Obviously, there was the year of 2020 when the pandemic hit, and everything went wild. So things were getting really exciting with the music career. That was really starting to build nicely. And then in 2020, it felt like I was forced into retirement. Literally everything that I'd been working for almost my entire life had gone. And so that was about 50% of my income at that point. And then design, inevitably, the clients were spending less money on projects and stuff like that. And so over the year, I managed to just about hang on in there, but it got to, I think, December. And I think that month I made like maybe 300 quid on design work. And it was getting pretty hairy. Wasn't quite sure how things were going to pan out. Thankfully, we got through that. And the music stuff bounced back with a vengeance. I'm busier now doing music than I ever have been in my life, which is phenomenal. I've had more opportunities to do amazing things with music than I ever thought would ever happen. And the design business is thriving as well. I've got clients in Canada and in Europe now as well. So that's growing. And because of the pandemic, as devastating as that was, I was forced to kind of skill up and learn a few new things. And so I got into doing a bit more video editing, and I got into doing podcasting and all that sort of stuff. And that was really cool. And at the same time, I partnered with a friend of mine, and we launched a clothing company. So I sort of came out of the pandemic with all these new exciting things to kind of, like you say, add strings to the bow. And each one of them, be it the design business, clothing company, the podcasting, the music stuff, each of them have like really begin to kind of be able to stand on their own legs almost. And some of them are still in their infancy. The clothing company's going through a bit of a relaunch, but all of them are busy and exciting and doing some good stuff. So yeah, I have a lot going on. Arguably, probably too much for a dad to be doing.
That's kind of the next stage to the question that I'm curious about, is that you go over that whole history back to 2017, 2018, and then obviously everyone had that whole COVID thing, drop on our plate in 1920. But then you also introduced a baby into the mix at that time. So how did it feel? Like, you're going through this full dream desire to get all this stuff up and running yourself. COVID happens, and you're trying to, be the provider for the family and kind of think about all these things, as well as with this child coming along. How did it feel to kind of have that on your shoulders?
To be honest, it was exciting. I have always been a bit of a rebel at heart, I guess. And if someone tells me that I can't do something or I shouldn't do something, it kind of makes me want to prove them wrong. So, for example, just before I got married, I've been married 12 and a half years now. Just before I got married, some of my mates guys who were married were like, you're going to have to, it's all going to change, and, you're not going to be able to pursue music anymore. And there were a few mates I knew who were musicians that basically quit music. And I know other friends whose marriages have fallen apart because they've continued to pursue music, like all these negative things. And at the time, I wasn't really doing much with music, so a part of me didn't think much of it, but also a big part of me thought, like, this can't be true. You must be wrong. And so therefore I'm going to do everything I can to prove that it's possible to, be happily married and still pursue music.
Mm.
And so that's exactly what I did. And funnily enough, we got married, and the day I got back from our honeymoon, I got a call from a friend of mine who was managing a band, and he invited me to come and audition for them. And so we spent like the first 3.5 years of our marriage with me in a band, going off and touring and stuff like that. So that kind of that rhythm was integrated fairly early on into our marriage. And then when we were expecting Levi, the same kind of thing sort of happened. Now, like, they're right, things do change. Of course they change, but it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Mm.
A friend of mine, a guy called Turl, who is a phenomenal drummer, incredible family man, and just a legend. I remember talking to him about this sort of stuff, and he shared something with me which I love, and I share with other people, and I'm going to share it with you, which is
Appreciate it.
and to be honest, I think I've shared this with you before actually, but it's this idea that your dreams don't stop when you get married or you have kids. It's just that they are now a part of it, and they get to share in
Mm.
it, and likewise you get to share in their dreams. And this idea of me continuing to pursue music, or these various different career paths, or whatever you want to call it, these are all dreams that my wife and my son get to share in. And equally, as my wife progresses in her career, and as I watch Levi grow up and he figures out what he wants to do, I get to share in that dream. And it's a real honor and a
Mm.
privilege to be able to do that. And I think if that's your mindset, it changes how you approach things,
Mm.
because you want to be able to do these things in a way which honor and serves your family.
Mm.
And it helps you from being less selfish, but also being able to experience and enjoy all these amazing things that you get to do. And by doing that, it just makes it easier. Like, I've had the honor of being able to tour all around Europe in the last couple of years with a couple of different bands, and that's been incredible. And I miss my family greatly, but they've allowed me to do that, and it's been incredible to do that, with, like, knowing that they're supporting me along the way.
Mm. Yeah, there's no bitterness from their side that you're not there. It's a celebration that you're doing this awesome thing. That reminds me, though, I feel like there must be like back in primary school, as a kid, like 7-year-old, 8-year-old, there'll be like that one guy who's like, oh, do you know James who goes to the other school? His dad is in a band. It's so cool. Like kind of what you're getting at there is allowing your son to have that kind of experience, to buy into this thing that I think we all would agree is awesome.
Yeah,
So no, I think that's a really awesome way to frame things, to look at your dreams like that.
yeah, it's cool. I mean, there will come a point when I'm sure Levi won't think I'm cool at all. But right now he does, and I'm gonna take that.
Ride that wave, man. Ride that wave.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
before we were chatting, before we started recording, you said, and I wrote a little quote. You wrote that you said no such thing as a partnership these days, and it just got me thinking about, well, what you thought a partnership looks like. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there with this idea of entering into something and not changing for the bad, but changing for the good, and allowing like this whole dreams to share and to grow together. Was there anything you'd like to add of like how you would view a partnership?
Yeah, I guess one of the biggest challenges being a musician and touring artist, like, you get to meet loads of people all over the place, and pose for photographs, do autographs, all that fun stuff. And it isn't like a reality that is like every day. So you can go away on tour for a couple of weeks and experience that, and it's really cool, and it's great for your ego. But you get home and you have none of that, And I think being able to measure like your expectations and your family's expectations, and being patient and aware of what the needs are in that environment. First of all, keep you humble, which I think is incredibly important for the partnership. But as well as that, it opens you up to, I guess, knowing how best to serve your wife and your kid in that moment. Because when I walk through the front door, they're not going to see Matt or Dad, the rock star. They're just going to be like, okay, I need you to clean this immediately, or I need you to change this or whatever. And it's a humbling moment, but that's the most important thing to them in that moment. And if I want the partnership to succeed, I need to kind of get over myself and be like, yeah, you know what? My trip is done. I'm here now. So my role is like what I can do to work with you. And that, if I'm honest, that's hard. It is hard. But the more you do that, the easier it becomes and the more enjoyable it becomes. And so even recently, my wife and I have been talking about more things that I can be doing to help her be the best that she can be for her work, which means taking on a bit more responsibility with the boy and home and stuff like that. And the beauty of being self-employed is, at the end of the day, although I've got a lot on, I can do what I want when I want. That's kind of the whole point, which means I can be available to do school runs, and I can be available to pick up Levi at, a relatively short notice, depending on what's going on. And it does mean that she can then focus on doing her work and whatever it is that she needs to do. And that's all part of it. She allows me to go away on a 2-week tour. The least I can do is return that gesture, I guess, with whatever it might be, whether it be house chores or cooking or whatever. I actually found more recently that I've started to really enjoy some of these, I guess, what you would consider chores or mundane jobs. Like, I love cooking. I really enjoy cooking. I find it quite therapeutic, and I'm an artist, like creative, and I find the whole process like a really creative process, and I really enjoy food. So it's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
This is crazy, and maybe it's a reflection of my age, but I actually quite enjoy like washing up. Like, sometimes if there's loads of food on the plate, I find it a bit gross, but there's something about just washing the plates, stacking them. I found that quite therapeutic. If we've had a party and there's like 100 people over and the place is trashed, then I'm not. I'll be miserable. But if it's just the two of us, it's all good. Yeah.
That's an interesting one to look at it for sure. But no, I think that's an awesome way of looking at approaching the partnership. It sounds very much like a servant-hearted mindset to being a husband and being a dad. One final quick question. So I want you to imagine there is a new dad. He is in a dark room with some lullaby playing. He's got a baby that's like 2 weeks old. He's trying desperately rocking this baby to sleep, and he's just put on a podcast to try and, develop himself as a father. What piece of advice would you have for that new dad who is just like wide-eyed 3 a.m. trying to rock this baby back to sleep?
Okay, I would say to this dad, pause the podcast 5 seconds and just be in the moment. Because, and people say this all the time, the kids, they grow up so fast. It's true, they absolutely do. And before you know it, you won't be in that room doing like crazy feeds at bizarre times of the morning or whatever. It'd be something else. But every moment, I think, personally, is precious. So I would say, pause the podcast for 30 seconds to a minute, be in the moment. It might really suck, but it isn't going to be forever. And look down at your little baby and just know, like, they're not going to be that small for very long. And sooner or later, they're not going to want you to cuddle them and rock them to sleep or whatever it might be. And once you've kind of recognized that, hit play on the podcast again and finish listening to the episode.
That's awesome. I appreciate all your wisdom that you've been able to offer us today. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Matt. I really appreciate the wisdom that he was able to offer to us, and I really do appreciate him coming on the podcast. I want to extend another big thank you to all the time he's given to come onto the podcast and also give me some advice and tips on producing the podcast. Matt is an awesome guy. He has a few places you can check him out online. His clothing company is called Ghost Club Co. I'll leave a link to that. I'd really recommend checking it out if you're looking to pick up some new clothes. He also has a YouTube channel where he documents some of the tours he goes on, some of the gigs that he plays, takes you along for the ride. So if you have any interest in drums, musicianship, or just, maybe you have your own interests of being a self-employed musician, I would really recommend checking that out. So all the links to check him out will be in the description and the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us for this Dad Dialogue conversation, and I hope to see you again soon.